thousands, if not millions, have worked, lived, and been crushed by the oppressive system that we call society. There are many ways in which people are treated in this system. One of the things that shapes how we experience oppression is our gender. There are many great women and men who have fought against this system and tried to overcome it. One of those people was Alice Paul. She coined the Equal Rights Amendment as we know it today in 1972. The year it was passed, it got 22 of the necessary 38 states' ratification. However, after the first year, strong right-wing opposition arose, mainly led by Phyllis Schaffer. She was a dedicated and hard-working woman who believed that women were subordinate to men and fought for that view. She used arguments that catered to religious groups, such as if the ERA passed, then abortion laws and homosexual rights would be upheld. Women would be denied the right to be supported by her husband. Due to this opposition, the ERA only got one state's ratification the second year. This seemed like the end. However, after almost a decade of silence, pro-ERA groups arose and got 12 more states' ratification. It was only 3 states short of the necessary states' ratification when the deadline for ratification approached. Again, a pause in advancement occurred, but this time 35 years. In 2017, Nevada became the 38th state to ratify, opening the way for Illinois and Virginia to make history and gain the necessary 38 states ratification. Now, pro-ERA groups are working to remove the original deadline for ratification to get the ERA again passed in Congress. Now that we know a little bit about how our country is dealing with gender equality, let's turn to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Adventist Church is a global one that started here in the United States. It is the 7th largest Christian religion in the world. Adventist Church was co-founded by Ellen G. White, a prophetess and an ordained minister. Currently, the Adventist Church does not believe in women's ordination and does not allow women to be ordained. Let's take a look at how ordination started in the Adventist Church.
Ordination is not a biblical word, and the way we do ordination, I don't believe is really founded biblically. I think that if you go back in the history of our church and why ordination became a thing, it was because we weren't organized yet. We didn't really have a full list of what we believed or why we believed it or what a Seventh-day Adventist was, but we were kind of this loose-knit group who was very wary of things like organization and ordination. But there were some who were claiming to be a part of the group and were going around and teaching things that were not found in the Bible. And so because of that, the founding fathers of Adventism, the pioneers, felt that it was necessary to start some kind of ordination. And there were several people who had been ordained as pastors in other churches that were not in like the Friends Church or the Methodist Church. And they started ordaining people so that there would be some level of like, yes, you believe what we believe. So we took on kind of a traditional view of what ordination was without thinking through what that meant. So we never really developed a theology of ordination. We developed a tradition of ordination.
Many, just as Ellen White, feel a call to ministry and respond.
Well, I first felt called to be a minister when I was young, about 14 years old, and I just felt this strong impression on my heart that that's what the Lord wanted me to do, and it never really left. I didn't end up going straight into ministry. I was encouraged to do teaching, which I did and enjoyed, but the passion and just this sense that that's what God wanted me to do was kind of always there. So I ended up after teaching for about 5 years, I took a year to really pray about it. I put out fleeces, asking for God's clear leading. I wanted to be really sure, and he did. He was faithful in in opening up the doors and making clear that's where he wanted me to walk. And so I went back to seminary. I was in my kind of late 20s by then, reskilled, and have been pastoring ever since. Just really blessed with where the Lord's taken me, and I'm thankful for his leading.
I wanted to teach academy and help others who maybe were in similar boats to me have those kinds of experiences, and empower, kids who maybe have grown up in the church all their life or not, to have a relationship with Jesus. And I believe that, the fullest following of the Bible happens to be the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I went and sat in the Dean of the School of Theology's office and was like, I'd worked for him for a couple years, and I was like, I really want to teach Bible. Should I do a religion degree? Should I just do a minor? What should I do? And he said, you need a theology degree. And that made a lot of sense to me. So I did the double major, and then I also had minors, because if you're going to teach it at an Adventist school, you need to be able to do everything. So it never entered my mind at that point. I had been a theology major for like 2.5 years before I ever started considering pastoral ministry. And the way that came about was, as part of the program at Walla Walla, if you're a theology major, you are required for 1 year to partner with a local pastor and to spend 10+ hours a week in a local church. So again, I'm a pastor's kid. I've grown up on Adventist college campuses with really big churches with all the programming and the best music, and there's always someone better than you to do something. So I'd always gone to church and been involved in Pathfinders and Sabbath school and that kind of thing, but never really been involved in the church side of things because it was such a big church. And so I ended up at this little tiny church, Yuma Pine, close to Walla Walla, and there were 20 people in church on Sabbath. And the sanctuary was pretty full with 20 people, teeny tiny church. And I really experienced this lovely community of what a little tiny church is and what it means to be a part of that, which was new for me. It was just a really lovely experience. And from that, I started to feel like my next step at some point was going to seminary. And so I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I felt like that's where God was leading in my life. So I went into interviews my senior year, not knowing where I should be or where God wanted me. So I interviewed with all the ministerial directors who came to campus for pastoral positions, and with all the education superintendents who came to campus for education interviews. And I had, my education portfolio, and I had my ministry resume. And basically, I would sit down with these guys, and I would hand them my portfolio or my resume, and I would say, I have these 2 degrees. I don't know where God wants me. I want to be where he wants me. And then I would do the interview to the best of my ability. I just kind of left it up to God. And I'm a stubborn type. I had wanted to teach in some capacity since I was 6 years old. I thought that that's what I was going to do. And I got 0 offers for teaching, which is a little bit unheard of when you're a woman who is in math or science. And I got 3 offers for pastoral ministry. And so I really felt like that was God not only calling me, but confirming that calling for my thick skull. So I ended up in the Oregon Conference and could not have been more happy and more fulfilled to be there. And it was not where I ever thought I would end up, but it was exactly where I should have been and where God was leading in my life.
Still, women are discouraged and treated differently.
I know that for my female colleagues, it was a lot harder to get a job as a pastor, and took quite a bit longer. And in some cases, some of my colleagues who went to school with me to become pastors ended up taking other positions, some of them still within the church, but other positions that weren't specifically pastoring, because it was challenging for them to be pastor in a local church.
Having been called by God to do this job, it is disappointing when your wider church family doesn't accept you in it. That's just hurtful, because when you belong to a family, acceptance is something that everyone typically would like. And when it comes to ordination, when one person is ordained, another one is commissioned because somehow they don't have the same acceptance or status or whatever you'd like to call it, it just hurts. It's like being kind of the illegitimate daughter. You're allowed to wash the dishes, you're allowed to even sit at the table, but at the end of the day, you're still illegitimate, and that can hurt. So for that reason, I very much look forward to the day when our church ordains women as well as men.
This church, when I came to Tabernacle, the elders and people have tried to shield me from that as much as they could, but I do know there were 3 or 4 families who left and transferred their membership based on the knowledge that I was coming as an associate pastor. And one of them was in charge of the newsletter at the time, and sent out a newsletter with links and articles and videos about why women shouldn't be in ministry, and was subsequently relieved of his newsletter duties. He'd already put in for transfer of membership. He was already leaving, but felt it necessary to do that as his kind of last hurrah. So, yeah, I mean, I have experienced some things, but it just kind of comes with the territory, and I wouldn't be in ministry if it was just something I wanted to do, because it's too hard.
Yet, despite all those discouragement, women are still inspired to work for God and advance His kingdom.
When God put something on your heart and something that you really searched out, like I didn't just say, oh yes, I want to be a pastor, let's do it. I was very, very thoughtful and prayerful and considered in when it came to really working through this calling. I wanted to be sure it was a calling. It wasn't just something that popped into my head one day and didn't leave. Having gone through that, I'm quite strong in my heart that this is where God wants me. I want to be faithful to that calling. I don't want to just give up when it's hard. And there have been times when I have wanted to, it hasn't always been easy. And there have been times when I just thought, you know what, it'd be so much easier to do something else, but that's still there. And I want to be faithful. And I love it. I really love pastoring. I love loving people. I love opening the word with people. I love building community and inspiring people to connect with others and make this world a better place, build the kingdom of heaven that God's given us. All of that is an amazing job to do. So I continue on, and I really am thankful also for those women who went before me, who were not given the opportunities that I have. They opened the doors for me, and I would like to do what I can to open the doors for the next generation. So by staying in and continuing to serve, even illegitimately, so to speak, I'm hopeful that by the time people your age come through, that there'll be even more doors that are opened, and perhaps one day everyone will have a fair seat at the table. I'm looking forward to that day. So if I can stay in and help make that happen, I will.
I've always believed that the church is people. I believe that's a biblical idea. It's not a building down the street. It's people, and so it's an organism, and it's alive and it's active. And especially getting to be a pastor here at PAA for over a decade now, and interacting with students every single year, and seeing their energy and their joy, and seeing them do projects like the one you're doing, and creating positive change in our church is so inspiring to me.
As my country and my church face the question of true equality and what that means, each will influence the other. The passage of the ERA will no longer allow the Adventist Church to withhold ordination from women based on their gender. As the church struggles with the question of true equality in women's ordination, they are sending out a message to the whole world about who they are and what they stand for. I would encourage everyone to educate themselves concerning these matters. Here are a few resources to do so. Ask yourself, what kind of church, what kind of world do you want for your daughters, nieces, granddaughters? And make the change. Your voice, your church, your story.